It's Local Edition. Brad Pomerance here on the central coast of California. We are joined today by Devin. He is the executive director of the Upper Salinas Resource Conservation District. What is the Upper Salinas Resource Conservation District?
Other than a long name, it's
Exactly.
a local nonprofit, non-regulatory organization that works with local stakeholders to help manage their natural resources.
But is it governmental?
No, it's a special district under California law.
So it's quasi-governmental.
Quasi, yeah.
And you have directors?
We have 9 board members, 8 acting right now, 1 vacancy. And they help sort of come from all different groups, organizations, aspects, and experiences to come and help us with carrying out our mission.
And are they elected? Are they appointed?
They're appointed.
By Board of Supervisors.
That's correct.
So we're in San Luis Obispo County today, so they're appointed by the 5 members of the board, or maybe a few, each board member gets a couple.
Yep.
You are the paid staffer.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so I want to get a sense from you, since you're looking at natural resources, about the state of water in the Golden State.
Right.
There's no doubt that this year has been wet, a lot wetter than we expected. Last year was supposed to be the wet year and it wasn't.
Right.
Would you say, sir, that, let's start with California in general. Is California in general out of drought?
I'm gonna pause. I would say we're closer to being out of drought, but I don't feel comfortable saying we're out of it yet. We're getting closer. This year was wetter. But it's going to take a couple of years before I feel like we're really out of a drought. We've had a fairly significant drought, not just 4 years of having a drought, but there was actually a period of about 10 years where it was really dry. And so it's going to take a couple of years to get out of that situation.
Let's talk about Northern California.
Right.
Northern California was very, very wet.
Correct.
Even last year. Are they out of drought?
There probably are.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's the problem with our state, is that we're such a long state, and the weather patterns hit, depending on where you are. You may get a localized weather pattern versus down here, maybe it doesn't hit us as intense.
So let's talk about Central and Southern California, because those two seem to be more linked.
Right.
Are those areas out of drought?
I feel like we're getting closer. I still hesitate to say that we're out of it.
Okay.
The reason I say that is because most of our storage that we have for water is pretty much reliant upon what happened this year. And if you look at our reservoirs, not all of them are at full capacity.
Although there is some good news.
There is.
I think about reservoirs or above ground storage in your area. For example, let's start with San Antonio Lake. That's in your area,
That's
correct?
Yep.
You're basically north San Luis Obispo
That's
County.
correct, yep.
So in December 2014, that lake was at 5% capacity.
That was,
Now it's at 51% capacity. If we look at Lake Nacimiento, which is a very significant source, is that kind of the Monterey County, SLO County line?
That is, yeah.
So in December 2014, 23% capacity. Now we're at 85% capacity.
Right.
Salinas Reservoir, this is a great story, was at 20% capacity in December 2014. Now 100.4%.
Right. So
that's a good. Those are
good
news.
numbers.
That's good news.
Yeah. So when you have to keep in mind though is also what are those systems usually? Are they kind of a flashier system, or do they take longer to recharge? So Nacimiento and Salinas, those ones react very quickly to stormwater or rainwater that comes in high intensity levels. Nacimiento being at 51% is sort of more of a better sort of framework to look at.
You mean San Antonio Lake?
San Antonio,
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you look at San Antonio, it's taking longer for it to get to a full volume.
Right.
So that's what I was saying about. Yes, it was a better year, but it's going to take a couple of years before San Antonio is, before the Central Coast is out of a drought. When you get to that point where San Antonio is 100%, then I'll feel okay about saying we're out of it.
I want to shift gears and talk about the question of the interaction between the federal government and districts like yours.
Right.
I think it's fair to say that the federal government, at least under the new administration, is a bit skeptical about human impacts on our water supply, on climate. Is that a fair answer?
From what I'm gathering from what we've heard so far, yeah, it seems fair to say that that's their perspective on things.
And so how does that impact a Resource Conservation District?
Well, when you're one that has to go and try and help landowners try and manage for changes in the environment, whatever those may be, and the legislature doesn't necessarily, and the administration doesn't back you on those via policies, programs, funding opportunities, it's hard to help those landowners make that crosswalk, that sort of process. They're seeing it firsthand and realizing that this is something that's happening to them, and my job is to provide them the services and tools to be able to do that. Sometimes that comes from the federal government, and when the federal government says we're not believing this is really the case, then I'm stuck at a kind of an impasse, basically. How am I supposed to help people that I can't get the help from the government to help?
Right, and one could say the situation is pretty dire. What we know is that the new administration has proposed a federal budget. It's early, so we don't exactly know what the final numbers will be, and of course Congress will need to weigh in, but that federal budget slashes funding quite significantly, double-digit slashing to the EPA, for example, and any kind of entity below the EPA. How will that impact programs through RCDs?
It's going to impact this probably statewide and locally pretty dramatically. A lot of our programs that we offer do come from federal funds initially, and sometimes those are actually filtered through on state level, and then they even make it down to the county level. So things that we're doing with our landowners, usually we're all grant sourced, so we have to go find grants to help provide those services. As those funds, such as the Farm Bill is one of the good examples that comes through NRCS, as those funds start dwindling, the services that we can provide to our landowners also go away as well. And so they're left with how do they try and achieve these goals, and with all the impacts and resources that they have, with a changing economy at the same time.
So what can be done? I mean, a lot of these ag interests did trend in favor of the Republican nominee who ultimately won. I mean, is it time for them to speak to the candidate they voted for and who ultimately was victorious?
I think so. I think this is the time that they need to speak up and say, this is stuff that we've been counting on, that we need for our community to be able to survive for the long term, to be resilient for any sort of new changes that happen within our environment. And I mean, when I say environment, not just the actual physical, natural environment, but the social and economic environment as well. And so if we don't have those people coming up and saying, we need these services to be provided to us for groundwater management, for soil health, for wildlife, for whatever it may be, then they're kind of at a remiss for what they're going to be dealing with.
So should organizations like yours start looking to Sacramento, or if you're in Nevada, Reno, or whatever it may be, I mean, are states going to have to start bearing the weight?
They already are. So within the world of California RCDs, there's actually a parent organization called the CARCD, which is California Association of RCDs, and they're already planning on going. They're already in Sacramento. They're actually planning on going back to DC and bringing this case, because they're really concerned. Just as we spoke about the federal dollars not making it down to the local landowners, they're taking this issue to DC, saying this is going to impact not just our state in California, but since there's RCDs or soil water conservation districts across the entire nation, this is going to impact farmers as a whole.
What about money from Sacramento, though?
Sacramento, from this point, we seem like to be pretty solid as far as getting funding from.
Have they been funding already, despite or as a result of federal intervention?
I haven't seen anything change so much on a state level. We've been getting a lot of what's called Proposition 1 funds that we've been applying for.
The water bond?
Yes.
I see.
So as long as those still continue to play into factor, but again, when the changing administration is saying that the interplay with the state, we'll see what happens.
We'll have to see what happens. His name is Devin Best. He is the executive director of the Upper Salinas Resource Conservation District in northern San Luis Obispo County. I'm Brad Pomerance, local edition.